Archaeoastronomy is really interesting here because, as you can see, there's the shot from Google Earth. There's north, south, east, west. Pay attention. Pay attention to north, south. It is clearly not the same direction as that. These guys did not make mistakes. This site is not aligned with current north, south, east, west. This is a big problem. We're not dealing with magnetic north, we're dealing with true north. When we measured it, we found that it was misaligned by 3 degrees, 17 minutes and 42 seconds, anti-clockwise. And this is just not possible. Something really strange must have happened between the time that this was constructed and where north-south is today. We just don't know when this happened. Some major geophysical force shifted the axis of planet Earth. It is no longer in the place where it used to be. And Adam's calendar, as far as I know, is the only ancient site measured and analyzed today that shows us this strange phenomenon, that north-south has shifted. I don't know of any other site. It has got nothing to do with the precessional wobble. Remember, the precession, 26,000 years or whatever it is, doesn't matter where you are in the wobble. North-south stays north-south. It doesn't shift. So, something else must have done this. And, you know, I suggest that maybe Charles Hapgood was onto something when he speaks about crustal displacement, and that every few 100,000 years, the Earth's crust shifts and takes north-south with it. And maybe that's what happened here. Or maybe it's connected to the giant flood, or the Nibiru, planet Nibiru, or some ancient planet coming past us, and the geophysical forces actually shifting north-south away from where it is. So the question is, what are all these stone circles about? What are they for? You're a smart bunch of people. I don't really have to tell you, you already know, right? You can clearly see that just by looking at them, these circles very obviously resemble cymatic patterns, like what we looked at right in the beginning. And that's exactly what they are. Each one of these stone circles is a cymatic pattern representing the sound at that specific point, the sound of Mother Earth at that specific point as it manifests. Each one of these stone circles generates incredible amounts of energy. Therefore, they're energy-generating devices because of the stones that are packed along the cymatic pattern at that site. And I know this because we measured it, not because I've got a warm, fuzzy feeling in my stomach. So I can tell you they're very powerful energy-generating devices because we've measured it. And I'll bring you back to this magnetron. And the flower-shaped structures. Remember the flower-shaped structure? Well, that's exactly what you're looking at here. A resonant cavity magnetron, generating high frequency, high energy generator. There's the channel leaving the magnetron. Can you see? So if a tiny magnetron that we use in metal factories can cut metal in a split second, you can imagine how much energy a giant magnetron 15 or 20 meters in diameter will generate. And made out of silica. So it's silicon-based technology, not made out of metal. It's made out of a far more reactive component. The problem with these magnetron-like structures is that I asked two magnetron scientists, or guys that seem to know about magnetrons, how much energy a magnetron this size could generate. And the answer was, from both of them, one in Boulder, Colorado, and one in Glastonbury. But they both told me that it will generate more energy than all the power plants on Earth today. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but that's what they told me. So I said, oh, that sounds interesting. And what's fascinating is several psychics, completely unrelated, not knowing that the other had said it to me, told me that this kind of technology that we're looking at here was responsible for the destruction of Atlantis. Do with that information what you want. What we're looking at is a giant energy grid, as you can see, of thousands and thousands of these magnetron-like structures, creating unimaginable amounts of energy, generating an atmosphere, geoengineering this planet, or doing things that we can't even imagine. All connected in one huge grid at the southern tip of Africa, where the Anunnaki had their gold mining activity. Mining gold for purposes that remain still largely mysterious. Some of the measurements we took in these stone circles are electromagnetic activity, sound frequencies, the loudness of the frequencies, and this thing called the heat signature. Now, the heat signature is the measurement at the average temperature in centigrade 300 meters below the surface. It's not the temperature on the ground. That's why it's called the heat signature. The heat signature measured by the device we used suggests that at 80 degrees Celsius, you're standing on top of a volcano. So keep that scale in mind. Most of the places around the circles, outside the circles, the heat signature over here is 5.5 to 6 degrees Celsius. This particular spot was 5.5 degrees. 5.5 degrees Celsius. The moment you swing the device into that tiny little circle there, it goes from 5.5 degrees to 28 degrees. Something strange has happened. You swing it inside here, it goes to 33 degrees. 5.5 degrees, 33 degrees. Something strange is going on. That strange thing that's going on is the sound frequencies that are coming out of the walls. Nothing outside, and just ambient noise outside. And when we swing the device inside, we measure 14.5 gigahertz. Gigahertz, people. This is, you don't measure gigahertz of sound in nature. This is the strangest phenomenon that you will find. Sound frequencies in the gigahertz. Nothing lower than gigahertz coming out of these walls. And then the electromagnetic field that runs horizontally inside, most likely as a result of the sound frequencies that are being generated from the cymatic activity. In this instance, like in most stone circles, the electromagnetic fields seem to run horizontally, inside, only inside, nothing outside. Go inside, you come across this weird electromagnetic field that seems to, it shields you from the satellites. So when you go in there, you lose satellite reception. You lose GPS connection when you go inside these stone circles. And it's a great trick to use with the macho guys. Then we move up to this bigger circle at the top here. Here we measure inside this one, 33 gigahertz, 33.5 gigahertz sound coming out of the walls at 103 decibels. The heat signature outside here is 6 degrees Celsius. When you swing the device inside there, it goes up to 58 degrees. 6 degrees, 58 degrees. Something very extraordinary is happening here that we don't understand. And it's a really high, at 580 megahertz activity, these electromagnetic fields that run there. And then, and then we go to Adam's calendar, and everything we think we know about science just starts to get really shaky. Because these measurements just, seem impossible. Again, you see the imaginary circle. The interesting thing is with the stone circles, at least you've got stone walls. So when you're measuring the sounds coming out of the circles, you say, well, they're coming out of the walls. Here, there are no walls. And yet, we measure sound frequencies that are much, much higher as any of the stone circles. As you approach, we normally park up down here, we park the cars and we walk towards the edge of the cliff, and then suddenly the calendar comes into sight. It's at a slight angle down towards the edge of the cliff. It comes into sight, and as you walk into this imaginary circle, you walk through there. There's ambient noise here, you walk through there, the sound frequencies go beyond 375 gigahertz. Now, as far as I know, Frequencies of this level have never been measured on planet Earth. So we're looking at a very unique situation here. The heat signature, as you cross into the imaginary circle, it goes from 9 degrees, here the heat signature is 9 degrees outside, or 9.5 degrees. As you cross into the imaginary circle, it shoots to 77 degrees. Now remember, at 80 degrees you're on a volcano. You go between the two stones in the middle, it shoots beyond 80 degrees. Now it's telling you standing on top of a volcano. And that's clearly not the case, because you're standing on quartzite. Another important thing, this is the bedrock. It's known as black reef quartzite. It's sandstone. And all those stones of Adam's calendar are dolerite. They're brought from somewhere else. They don't belong there. So they're brought from somewhere else to construct the calendar. Then the electromagnetic fields here are, this is where it starts to really get even more freaky. Very high activity. You walk in here and you just get this electromagnetic shield that shuts you off from the satellite. And I've tried this so many times with the macho guys, you know. They come there with their big fancy SUVs and they're very sensitive wives, spiritual wives, and they support them. They're there physically, but not really in spirit. And then you tell them, and they normally hang around, you know, they're sort of like, they tolerate their wives being spiritual. They give them freedom. And then I try to get the guys involved, and I say, listen, have you got a GPS? Of course I've got a GPS, I've got the best GPS. I bet you a GPS won't work in here. So of course it's going to work in there. It's the best GPS money can buy. So well, bring it. And they fetch their GPS, and I say, okay, well, check it outside. And they walk around there, and it works perfectly. As they walk in there, it goes. It just starts to scramble. And it's great watching this. It's like clockwork, I tell you. It's fantastic. It's like watching a comedy show. So they walk in there. And here's the stone circle. Like, no, there's the stone circle. See, it works perfectly, doesn't it? Every single time. And suddenly they look up at their wives and they go, and start listening to their wives. It's great. Male ego, it's a fantastic thing. So glad I'm a man. Then you go between the stone circles in the middle, I mean the two calendar stones in the middle, and no longer does the electromagnetic field there run horizontally. There it changes completely, the polarity and everything about it changes, and it runs out of the ground into the sky at a much higher energy than the activity around it. So what have we got? I think we got one of these. Something like this. Ancient civilizations. Scientific evidence and measurements of advanced technology using nature, using stone, using silicon-based technology, the way we should use it, in the rocks. And maybe this is how the Anunnaki got the gold off the ground. They didn't send it with skyships. They just simply beamed it up. Beam up the gold, Scotty. Where do you want it? Do you want it in the spaceship? Do you want it on the moon? Do you want it on that planet? Maybe that's what Adam's calendar was used for as well. That brings me to the phenomenal story of the sacred stones, these donut-shaped stones. There are dozens and thousands of these stones in South Africa, but that doesn't mean they're easy to find. And I took that one that's sitting there to Nassim Haramein, but before I tell you that story, Seiza technology was only discovered in 2009 when they started sharing the story of Seiza technology as opposed to laser. Laser uses light, Seiza uses sound. Stands for sound amplified by stimulated emission of radiation as opposed to light amplified by stimulated emission of radiation. And they started getting very excited about Seiza technology because of its applications in the military. Not for advancement of humanity, but always the military, right? So, at first I thought that we started measuring very powerful energies around these stone circles. And at first I thought that they were like frequency converters, that you put a frequency in, and it converts a frequency to another frequency, and you can possibly put it through the cone-shaped tool, which is like the tip of the Seiza beam. Like in a laser beam, you've got a crystal that creates the beam of light. Here in a Seiza beam, you don't need a clear crystal, you need something that has acoustic properties. So, cone-shaped tools that create Seiza beams, vortexes. And then I met Daniel, who's been making these vortex coils in New York. And as I told you, by putting sound into the middle, he creates plasma. And I realized that these donut-shaped stones are far more powerful energy devices than I ever could have imagined. They actually are toroid vortex generators. And somehow connected to these ancient circles. And as you see, it's very clearly the same kind of shape as we see in the toroids, in Thrive and other documentaries that have shown us. We put one of these stones in a bucket of water. The next morning, thousands of tiny little air bubbles formed, and they were spiraling around, going into the hole, into the vortex of the stone. This is just a photograph of it going on. Clearly this energy is constantly being generated and it's alive. But I took the stone last year in July to Nassim Haramein on Kauai, to his residence project, because I wanted him to do some research and on this, and I thought he's the one guy that would really be able to utilize this. If you put a sound frequency into it, it'll create a huge energy field around it. And boy, was I right. So I got onto the aeroplane with Louise, and I wrapped the stone up, and I put it in my bag. And we left Johannesburg for Qatar, for Doha, United Arab Emirates, and I forgot about the stone. And then we stayed for 2 hours there, and then we got an aeroplane to Chicago, USA. At which point my bag went through Homeland Security scanning. I didn't know about this. But we got on the plane and we're waiting to take off when the intercom came up and said, "Louise Clark, please identify yourself." And I looked at Louise and I went, "What have you done?" So she put her hand up and this air hostess comes running along. And she says, "You must follow me off the plane, man." And I went, "Hold on, I'm not letting Louise get off the plane on her own." So I followed her off the plane, and there's my bag on the tarmac next to the aeroplane with 5 guys with guns around my bag. And so we both go down, and I say, "It's my bag," and lots of confusion. I send Louise back up the stairs, and she's standing in the aeroplane, looking at me down there. And they say, "Open your bag, so there's a security thread in your bag." And so I think, oh my God, it's the stone. And I say, what am I going to tell them? I can't tell these guys with guns and TSA security that this is ancient advanced technology. Not going to go down well. So I say, well, it's a collectible stone for my friend. It's African curios. It's, handcraft for my friend in Kauai. So as I'm opening the bag, and have you ever tried to open tightly wrapped, bubble wrapped, anything with tape around it, with 5 guys with guns in the middle next to an aeroplane. It's virtually impossible. I think I broke every fingernail I had trying to get this thing to open, and the more longer it took, it felt like forever. Eventually I managed to get open, and out pops the stone, to great confusion. Because they thought I was a drug smuggler. I felt like a drug smuggler. And so great confusion, and I said, you see, it's a stone, it's just a stone. Going, if only they knew. And there was one African guy, tall African guy, and he looked at this, and he went, oh, I've seen those. And he turned around and he started to walk away. And I really think that he was the guy that diffused the tension there. Because if you think about the set of circumstances, it's really bizarre, people. Everything that happened there. It's like everyone went into like some sort of brain freeze, right? They didn't check the rest of my bag. I pulled out one thing. They accepted it. They made me put it back in the bag, and we left. It's weird. It's really, I only thought about it afterwards. We went into a weird time warp there. Some sort of an energetic thing descended upon us there. Anyway, as I would close my bag and going back up the stairs, Louise was standing in the stairs, and the captain had come out of the cockpit at that stage. And he was furious. He didn't know what was going on. He said, if the plane isn't off the ground in the next 2 minutes, I'm offloading the whole plane. And then he said to Louise, as I was walking up the stairs, looking at Louise, I was thinking, the stone works. But I had no idea how well it worked until I sat down next to Louise, and she said, when the captain came out of the cockpit, he said to her, whatever is in that bag crashed the TSA security system. So, it is thanks to Homeland Security and TSA security at the airports that we have scientific evidence and proof that we're dealing with ancient advanced technology. So if anybody tells you there's no evidence of ancient advanced technology, you say, oh really? You seem uninformed. And if they tell you, what kind of rubbish, I've never heard of it, you know what to tell them. I've never heard of it is not a scientific argument. So this brings us to the fact that these ancient sites around the earth are not just built randomly, they're all built on very specific energetic nodal points. The Russians know this very well. This is the famous Russian grid that describes the earth as a giant crystal. Valerie must know much more about this. We'll torture him later and get some information out of him. Because these Russians are keeping secrets from us, I know this. Then I found this amazing Sumerian text on a clay tablet. It's just unbelievable that this knowledge is right there. And this is what it says. In distant days, in those days after destinies had been decreed, after An, who's Anu, and Enlil had set up the regulations for heaven and earth. These are powerful dudes. They set up the regulations for heaven and earth. I mean, what the hell's going on here? Who are these people? And then it carries on. Enki, the exalted knowing God, by the rules for heaven and earth, the fixed rules, he set up the cities. So what this is telling us is that there's some sort of energetic imprint on the surface of the earth that seems to be echoed in the sky. The rules of heaven and earth. By which code and these energy grids they set up the ancient cities. And then David Wilcock a few years ago started leaking the fact that the United States Air Force emblems and Space Command and military emblems encode this information. And they show the Earth with these delta-shaped things that have got nothing to do with craft, but have got everything to do with sacred geometry and the phi factor. and the physical manifestation. But they show these rings around the planet Earth, these bands. And those rings are referred to as the rules by the people in the military. And these rules are some sort of energy fields around planet Earth. They don't know where they come from, but they've always been there. And this is why they're encoded in these logos. And this is spectacular because my friend Paul Gravenstein phoned me out of the blue when I was doing this research. And Paul Gravenstein, I don't have enough time to talk about him, but he's a remarkable individual that can measure energies and frequencies, and he encodes things in water and his own devices that he emits, and he cures disease no matter where you are on planet Earth. Once he encodes his device with the energy of your disease, he will cure you wherever you are. He's been doing this for friends of mine, my mother and father, for friends of mine in America, and so forth. He also works with the farmers to cure the land and prevent the crops from going bad, being eaten by insects or viruses or fungus. He enhances the soil so the crops grow 400 times faster and better. And he can measure energy fields. He, for example, measured that Great Zimbabwe is encoded with Enki energy, totally, utterly encoded with Enki energy. And he phoned me out of the blue and he said, I don't know how you're going to take this, but I've detected this energy field around planet Earth at the same time that I'm doing this. And he says, there's like this binary code energy field around the planet. It consists of ones and zeros. It's like an electronic binary code that someone put up there. It's no longer intact, but it exists in large patches that are scattered around the Earth. And we'll come back to that. And this brings me to this ancient advanced technology on a gigantic scale. And you realize that these ancient temples, especially in Egypt and other parts of the world, got nothing to do with worshipping gods and goddesses and offering food here and kissing butt over there so that you don't go to hell and, doing it in exact order. And realize that these giant obelisks are nothing less than antennae and receiver. When I put my head next to this tip of this obelisk and Hugh Newman tapped on the other side, guess what I found? It rings like a bell. Dong! Just like my stones in South Africa. And I went, oh my God, we're dealing with giant advanced technology. We're dealing with places that are not worshipping gods and goddesses. There's not enough space. There are too many pillars. Not enough space. When you look at it from the air, you see very clearly that this is not a place for people to mingle around, these weird geometric patterns. All these pillars here, and this weird roof structure that is not waterproof. What is this all about? And you realize that even the Parthenon has got that interesting entrance portal over there with too many pillars, not enough space, and then around the Parthenon, famous Parthenon structure, we have the remains of a geometric foundation that used to be part of that entire hilltop complex that is no longer there. When you go here, you see same like Parthenon-like structures. And they tell us that this is where you had to come and worship here and then offer food there. And if you didn't do it properly, you'd be smited. And there was a lot of smiting going on in the ancient times. They liked smiting. It was their favorite pastime. And that's where the people apparently used to live, over there. And this is all made up stuff. They make the stuff up. There's no real scientific evidence for it. And this one is just fantastic. This is a platform with too many pillars once again, and concentric circles here in front of the platform, and other stuff that's gone, which have given us more information. There's another Parthenon-like opening there, and you start to realize very quickly that we're dealing with ancient advanced technology on a giant scale, and that these are not temples, but actually templates. Templates for what? Templates for giant circuit boards, energy circuit boards, giant energy circuits, silicon-based technology on a gigantic scale. That's what these things are. I love this one. This is just it's ridiculous. You got to be kidding me. You know, when I've been doing this presentation now for a year with this, and I've had microchip engineers come to me afterwards and say, my God, and they start to explain to me exactly how it works. And explain, yeah, this is exactly what, and explain to you how the energy would flow, why it has a top, and why the pillars are in between. And I was telling you what I saw just in Arizona, when we were in Arizona just a few weeks ago. We're driving along, and there was a storm forming in the distance. And I saw exactly the pattern. Imagine this one of these temples floating in the sky. I saw a cloud, a bank of clouds, then horizontal pillars coming down, and another bank of clouds underneath it, and then space below it. It was like this stuff imitated in clouds in nature, and then this lightning going from the top layer down to the bottom layer, down these channels of clouds. And I went, oh my God, this stuff replicates itself in nature. It's not just here, it's all around us. So when you build it, they will come. And when you combine silica and water, arguably the two most abundant elements on Earth, you got some very powerful energy generating devices, and storage of energy, and storage of knowledge and information. And I mean, this one of the pyramids just blows my mind. It's like, you've got to be kidding me. It's a giant energy complex. I'm not going to show you this video clip, but if you watch the opening scene of this movie, it's a movie called Hackers. Just go onto YouTube and watch the opening scene, and you see them flying over New York. It's 3 minutes long, and suddenly Manhattan, the buildings become this circuit board. So they're telling us this in movies. And the rules of heaven and earth, this giant energy grid around the earth, has been put there by these ancient civilizations. These ancient structures, circuit boards, were the energy devices to somehow keep this energy grid around the planet Earth. This binary code that my friend Paul Kravenstein found. And this is what Morpheus told us. People are the source of energy. When you saw this in the Matrix, you didn't understand it, did you? But now you do. And why are people the source of this energy? It's because they use the sound of human voice and sound of humans. That's why they have amphitheaters attached to it, with resonating lines of pillars that resonate the sound from one to the other, and then channel it into the plug point of the circuit board that starts to give the sound of the people, fill them with fear. You get them excited, they make a lot of noise. You channel that energy into, and the sound of the people activate the circuit board to keep the grid active. And there's your amphitheater activating the circuit board. And so it goes. So the question we're going to ask ourselves is, what the hell have we learned from this? This is all very exciting stuff, but if we can't put this information to good use, then let's just go home and slit our wrists. Because tomorrow morning we have to wake up and go back into the slave trade, right? We being the slaves. So what we've learned is that we're enslaved on our own planet. We live on a prison planet. There are not just one energy grid around us, there are several energy grids. Again, not enough time to go into that, but the movies tell us this. They share this information with us. Remember, this is why Hollywood was created, and blockbusters were created, to bust the block of our unconsciousness. They're filled with advanced knowledge and information that's encoded on a very conscious level and a very subconscious level. And this information is fed to us constantly on subconscious levels. And no better movie to explain this prison to us than The Matrix. It's just spectacular.
how the Matrix told us this information. The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room, you can see it when you look out the window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. What truth, says Neo? That you are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, into a prison that you cannot taste or see or touch. A prison for your mind. I can't put it any better than this. That's why I can't quote the movie. And here, the last section here. You have to understand, most of these people are not ready to be unplugged. And many of them are so inured, so hopelessly dependent on the system, that they will fight to protect it. And that is the problem we face, people. That is the problem that each and one of us in this room faces. How do you tell those that are still asleep about this without them fighting to protect it? Because that's what they do, you know this. Now, how many of you want to take a little break before we get on to the Ubuntu and contributionism stuff? Do you want to take a little break? Yes? And then we're going to take another 30 minutes to finish this. So, you want me to move on? Yeah. Move on? Okay. So, the movie Matrix tells us Neo is an anagram for one. You are the one. We are the ones that we've been waiting for. We live in the age of prophecy, in the new age of prophecy. We are the children of the prophecy. It is up to us what we do with this knowledge and this information. So wake the hell up and go out there and be a bloody prophet. Be a seed of consciousness. Activate your knowledge. Share it with others. Don't be afraid. The 2012 crossing of the galactic plane, the 2012 prophecy wasn't just a prophecy event, it was a physical event. Because when we crossed, our solar system crosses the galactic plane, it activates our DNA. All those concentrated frequencies activate our DNA and the junk DNA. And we got children being born with 3 strands of DNA now. We got all these children that are born with past life memories, and more, that know who they are, or how many lives they had, and where they were before. And so it goes. So this is why we're experiencing such a rapid rise in consciousness. Because our DNA is actually physically being activated and creates a feedback mechanism. The more you think, the more you allow yourself to think outside the box, and the more you activate the activation of your own DNA. So we believe that we're born free on our planet, and from that moment on we realize that that's not necessarily the case, that we're not really born free on this planet. We cannot move around freely. We cannot live where we choose to. We have to follow rules and laws that we did not agree to at birth. How many of you agreed to the laws that you have to abide by today when you were born? Not a single one of us. And yet those laws and rules are imposed on us. We cannot cross borders. We have to have passports and work permits. And if you don't work, you become a vagrant and you go to jail. There's something wrong with that equation, I would say. So, this is not called freedom. What is this called? It's called slavery. Question is, how did it get so bad? And this is where we get to some very important ancient Sumerian texts that tell us very clearly when it got so bad and why it got so bad. And we get to these Sumerian texts that are known as the King's Lists, that talk explicitly about the time when kingdom was lowered to earth from heaven, and the first kings and priests were appointed by the gods to rule over the rest of humanity. These first priest kings were given fierce weapons and knowledge of alchemy and wizardry and sorcery, with which they could smite the people to control the people. Otherwise, the ideal kingdoms doesn't make any sense at all. Why somebody would suddenly become a king and own all this land and everybody would work for them. That doesn't make any sense at all unless they had fierce weapons with which to control the people. And boy, did they have fierce weapons with which to control the people. The first thing these first priest kings did was introduce money. One of the very first things they did. Money is not a consequence of thousands of years of barter and trade. That is part of the lie and the indoctrination that we've been exposed to. Money was created maliciously as a tool of control. It's not about the money, people. It's not about how much money the bankers have or how much money the wealthy people have. It's about using the money as a tool of control. And the hierarchy in the money chain is just part of the separation among the people. Divide and conquer principle.